So I'm going to just have everyone introduce themselves. I'm Amrita. I work at the Shri School. I coordinate for the counseling services at the two campuses that we have in Gurgaon.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tanushree, and I am a recruiter and advisor with the University of British Columbia, Canada.
Hello, I'm Namrata Pandey. I'm the International Admissions Advisor for University of Hong Kong. And before my stint, I was at the Doon School for 9 years, so I have both, yeah.
Good afternoon, namaste. My name is Nomita Mehra. I'm a counselor at the Shri School. I've been in this job for the last 4 years. This is my 5th year. Prior to that, I was a mathematics teacher. And I work at the Shri School Moulsari campus. We have 2 campuses.
But what the university and the school can do before the visit, what is to be done during the visit, and what can be done after the visit. And for each of these 3 parts, we're going to bring the university perspective as well as the school's perspective. Because the idea, and here I want to really sort of talk about what is the purpose of the visit, right? So a lot of times you'll see schools feel like, oh, they're coming here to recruit, so we don't need to do this, or we have the upper hand in this equation, or a lot of, so I think the purpose or the intent has to be very, very clear that it is going to be useful for me as a counselor, not only just for my kids, and how can I make the experience more meaningful and engaging for the university and the school to really take it beyond just the visit. Okay, so that's why there is something that you can start before, during, and after. I'm going to turn it over to Namrata to cover this.
Okay, so before the visit, what do schools really want to know about the university is what you have to think of. Of course, information about the university. So a brief information. Please, I think what needs to be covered in this is where you're located and some courses that are, you have been in this area, you know what different schools in India would want, or wherever you go. So some of those courses, a little bit on, say, the tuition fees, scholarships, on offer, a poster kind of a thing that the counselor can very easily print out and stick it up or send it out to parents. We were just invited for a particular university fair, and we were asked to send in a presentation with just 4 slides with just these 4 topics, and that was put up on the parents' portal. So the parents know about the university before they come in. They can do their research and can ask you more questions. It's not like, do you offer engineering? So I think that is important. Any USP that your university has, some new courses or something that is completely different, mention those. If you're in the heart of a city, you could mention that. So make sure it's not only a marketing tool, because often what happens is that some other, the counselor, the market, just make something that can be sent out. I mean, it doesn't really need to be a basic write-up, even if it's, an assembly announcement, a small 100-word, it's like a longer tweet, but something about your university that they can share. And of course, if there is a pre-survey that the school has sent out, please respond to them as honestly and as promptly as possible, because that has to be kind of, taken in by the school, processed, and then sent out to parents and students. So of course, this is a long process. You need to, get the appointment well in time for that. So now,
And just continuing from what Namrata had to say, a lot of high schools in India get a lot of visits throughout the year. Would you say it's okay to say 150 to a 200, and they're trying to filter all these visits? So if most of these visits are just promoting each of our universities, it is more of the same thing for the high schools. So it makes a lot of sense, like all of us in the room may be specialized in some area, like essay writing or some other skills that students can benefit from. So maybe when we are sending that proposal, if you want to add on that you could also do a session on this, this, or this, it provides a lot of room for the school to pick and choose something that really fits into what their students are interested in. So that's something that maybe all of us can just allow the schools to work around, because they are so inundated with a lot of high school visits all through the year.
Can I share an example here?
Yes, sure.
So, for example, this month we had a US university coming to our school, and I said, okay, talk about your university, but can you also cover the activity, the how to do the activity section on the Common App? So something like that really, and the kids really went back thinking that this was a value add. So, depending on which university is coming and at what point in the year, you could bring, you could couple them, you can ask them who's coming and, could you also do this, or ask them for suggestions on what extra can be done over and above just about the university.
Yes, I'm so glad to see a lot of schools also joining in, because it was university heavy to begin with in this session. But now that we have a lot of schools, I think when we send, as universities, when we are sending you that visit request, I think we are really looking forward to that response. It can be positive, it can be no, sorry, we can't accommodate you, but a lot of times the experience has been that there's no response. So we just don't know whether you want us to come back at a different time, whether this is a wrong time for you to have us. But even if you come back and tell me that, Tanushree, you know what, can you do a session that is different? I'm happy to look through to, go back to the university and say, can we do something else? Or look at resources that can really help me to come into the school and talk to students. But at times, we are so lost. We just don't know whether you've received our email or you don't want to respond to that email. So I think the first basic requirement that universities have, because we're coming from different parts of the world, we have to fix our itinerary. So we really need to know if we fit into your schedule, if it is convenient for you to have us. So please do respond to that visit request email. It just helps to build that connection and take that forward. And also, what can the school do? Share the school profile with us. Some schools are very direct. You have an international curriculum, the IB or the Cambridge curriculum or the Cambridge pattern, but a lot of schools in India have multiple curriculum. So you do the state level, you do the CBSE or the Indian curriculum, and you also do the Cambridge or IB. Now, when as a recruiter I'm addressing the students or I'm having a conversation with the counseling team, I don't know what requirements to mention. Sometimes, if you just follow one curriculum, it's very easy for us to know, okay, this is an IB school, so I should be talking about the IB entry requirements. But if you also have a state level, then if I need to cross-refer or refer it back to admissions before I'm coming to your school, I can do that. So do let us know if you're following multiple curriculums, especially state, Indian, Cambridge, IB. Do let us know. I think it makes the visit even more effective. Specific student interest, again, it follows from the first email that we write in for you to tell us that, okay, my students are really interested maybe in kinesiology. Do you think there can be a workshop related to this? Or just tell us that, can you do a study in US or study in Canada workshop? That may draw a lot more traction. A lot of us are very, very happy to do that, because in a very subtle way, we also talk about our universities, but I think together we win more markets, because we are coming as a consortium and we are trying to talk about the strengths of a particular country. So do let us know what you think will best fit or is the best need for your students. Logistics, very important. There is Google Map, but it often does not refer to roadblocks. So we follow Google Map blindly, and then you suddenly realize, oh, there's a roadblock, and then you don't know where to go. So do let us know, and it's also good for as universities to connect with high school counselors and let them know that, you know what, I'm coming from this part of the city, and they can then advise you, you must start an hour in advance or an hour and a half, because they know exactly how long it might take logistically. And also, for the high schools, it's always good. It's very, very operational, but it is always good that the security at the gate knows that you're expecting a visitor. Often, we are running between schools, and we are stuck at the gate because the security is trying to call the counselor might be busy in a class, and we are stuck there. It's heat, it's raining, and we are just waiting for the security to hear back and say that, yes, you were expected or you have a session. And often we are running late because we may have a second appointment to go for, and we are just standing and waiting. It's always good to let us, or the security at the gate, know. And at times when we are visiting schools, maybe the counselor has a day off, or there was an emergency, had to take a day off. Let us know who's the alternate person that we should connect with, so that when we are at the gate, we are not told, oh, she's not in school today, but we don't know who else to connect with. So if you let us know, okay, I'm not going to be in school, but you can connect with my colleague here, we will let that name at the gate, and we will be let in. University overview must be shared with parents, because we are taking that time to send you the cheat sheet of what might be very, very helpful for your students and parents. And it also helps all of you to kind of profile universities for that, profile students for that particular university. So please do share it with all stakeholders when we write into you, and share the details of what we offer, what's the cost, what kind of scholarships is the university offering. I think that's, yeah, point of contact and alternate point of contact, which we have already covered.
And also, counselors, we don't expect a room full of students. We just want interested students. So sharing the profile and getting that interest, letting them know well in advance, and having a registration really helps, because we're happy with 10 students, but those who are interested, and not a room of 100 where, it's very distracting talking to people when they're chatting and kind of not interested in what we're saying. So I think that definitely is something. You're there next.
Okay, so we come to during the session when you're at school. We did a survey with the counselors to understand what they think must be covered in the university's presentation. And simultaneously, we've also done a survey with students. So we have a bit of a difference of opinion. We'll get to that. That's always the case, right? So they need the, oops. Okay, so they want about the university is what everyone wants to know, and we'll sort of get to more details of this in our following slides. Course information choices is the second most required piece of information. Then, of course, we have specific subject and grade requirements. So if you're doing an economics course, can they do it without math? If it's the IB, do you need a higher level math? Which math now? So all of those conversations. What are the application requirements? So if you see things like demographics, when we spoke about the USPs, when we are saying give us information about the university, so location actually comes up as a very, very minor understanding. But what's probably more important is, let's say, from the counselor's point of view, is the subject requirements. Okay. Then you have scholarship and financial aid, important timelines, internship and engagement and employment opportunities. Again, lesser from the counselor's point of view, but we'll see how this changes when we come to the student's perspective. And somehow very few votes for alumni interaction, but again, something that flips when we go to the students. Then that was the first question on our survey. Coming to some more questions, which says, apart from what is mentioned above, is there anything that your students look forward to or works well with your students? So the first thing is workshops or hands-on activities that give them a sample of the university's pedagogical methods or quality of teaching. So here I'd like to bring about a classic example. A lot of our students some of the national curriculum students find economics very math-heavy at universities. And it's not math-heavy in our current national curriculum. So if you have, if you can sort of organize, and I know some of the universities have course modules and all of those details, but that's very different from actually doing like a 30-minute, session on what the economics class would be like. Or like some of the universities have a tutorial system where the class size is really small, you're expected to read up and come, so they're not used to that in the Indian education system. Okay, so maybe give them, they can't deal with material that hasn't been taught or gone over once in class. But that changes when it's at university, right? So maybe talking about these things because they impact the success of the student when they're at the university. So I think what we're really looking, where the whole counselor's input is coming from is not just identifying whether the university is right or not, but also seeing the fit and seeing whether you'll be able to succeed and survive there. Okay. What truly makes them unique, and I'm going to let Nomita. Okay, so what makes you unique, which is, you know, a lot of times when you sit through so many university conversations, they all sound very, very similar. So when we spoke about the USPs, even on the slide earlier, so if you have the widest co-op programs, or if you have co-op programs not just in engineering, but many other, you know, disciplines, if you have like a really cool innovation center, or if you have, or if your university it's an art school and it's next to an art museum, you know, or you walk through an art museum to get to university. So those are really differentiating factors. So I think from a university perspective, we're really looking at those key differences or peculiar qualities which makes you distinct.
So most of our students want to know about how much do I need to get in grade 12, or what should be my test scores. So I think data really helps in contextualizing. It gives them a great reference point, or start to look at colleges and narrow down their lists. The kind of data that's available is basically very general, is not region specific. So it'd be great if universities during the visits can categorize according to the region they're visiting or the curriculum that they are going to be talking to. Like in our school, we have the IB as well as the national curriculum, which is the ISC. So it'd be great if the universities to refer to both the curriculums when they're talking about data. Visit after, okay, so this question is asked by every parent. Okay, what are the job opportunities like after college? And so it'd be great if universities do talk about their placement for international students in specific, because data available is also very general on this. What is your career development office, what is their involvement as far as international students are concerned? Do you have dedicated career guidance counselors for international students in your college? Next one.
Okay, so what do you think is the most irrelevant or boring part of the university presentation? So details from the website. I think we're expecting grade 11 and 12 to come after they've a little bit familiar with the university. And if it's going to be the same, then they're like, you know, we just got to miss class, but we didn't get to know anything which is relevant to me as an applicant from an X school, from an X country. So, you know, like taking on from what Nomita said, like stats like GPA, or, you know, it's very easy for me to see on the university that the range of, you know, SAT scores that are required are between 1400 to 1450, but maybe from India you take 1470 and above, or you've never had, you know, kids who you've taken who are below 1480 or whatever. So that's good to know for us, because then we want each child to engage in an application which is fruitful, which is worth the time and effort, and which will make that student not only a good applicant, but also a good candidate and a student at the university. So I think it's kind of difficult to sort of leave everything unanswered or loose. And when you're coming to us as a school, you're an expert in that region. So I think we are really looking at that expertise coming through in that session. Spending too much time speaking about the history of college, location, and demographics. So you'll see that this is going to be also sort of turn around when we come to the students. But from experience, what seems to work is if you really bring sort of context to the location. So if it's a city where, let's say, film production is really popular, If it's, if there's immense music culture and there's a music course, or don't leave the location and demographic and history as static information. If you're a lot of the all-girls colleges, if there's history in why and, how you sort of value and what are the kind of women that you're looking at or the kind of future women that you're looking at, that makes it so much more dynamic, and that these are the things that the kids will say, hey, this is why I want to go here. This is how they're going to ascertain fit, not just the SAT score or, So that really helps.
We think it's really important to have interactive sessions which are anecdotal. For example, we had a art university visit us recently, and she spent the counselors, the university representative spent most of her time showing samples of art portfolios that had worked, and in the process the students learned a lot about what worked and what didn't, and what they should be leaving out of the portfolio, what they should avoid putting in their portfolio. Another example is we had a university that requires interviews, and they did some mock interviews with our students, and that really helped our students to familiarize themselves with what they could expect when they actually had to do the interview. Or we had a university that got one of their students to talk to our parents and our students, and that really helped because parents were able to ask questions, direct questions to the students who had been studying there for the last 1 year, about safety, about transportation, about food, about accommodation, and children were able to ask about the curriculum, the teachers, the course, and how easy is it for them to move from one course to another course, and so that was really helpful. Rankings, well, this is something that we are trying to move away from. We don't want our kids and parents to focus too much on it, and we want them to look at things beyond ranking, because I could be looking at a ranking which ranks your university at 5 and another one that ranks your university at 10. So it's a good starting point, reference point, but we want them to consider a good fit. We want them to consider other aspects like the course that's being offered, or the way the curriculum is being transacted, or the kind of professors that are teaching, any research opportunities, the location, the size class, the size of the class, etc.
Okay, ideas and specific suggestions to make university presentations more meaningful to students, to understand the student background and expectation, and then disseminate information. So like at our school, just to give you a quick example, though we offer the national curriculum, we don't have streams. So English is the only mandatory subject, and you choose any other 4. So we had a presentation where a university rep kept saying, so for science stream students, so kids can't relate to that, right? Like, because that's not what they see around in their school. Then also we have a lot of our families are fairly affluent families, so they're not sort of looking at scholarship information so aggressively. So when you'll get our school profile, if we exchange that before, that helps you contextualize your visit and your, the information that you share at school. To understand the school's academic board and provide information. So again, the curriculum, what are the subjects? So a lot of times we've had, sort of universities talk about subjects which aren't even offered in our school, right? And then again, that's something that's not relevant because that's not a possibility. Alumni speaking, especially Indian students. So we had like a university coming in, and they actually brought in students who were from Gurgaon who were studying at that university. So I know this may not be possible all the time, so we understand that, but even if it could work, if it's not physically the alumni, but even if it's a video. But a lot of times we see that there are videos of people from some other country and some other background, and our children may not be able to get the kind of sort of understanding that they would be able to relate to with someone from the same region.
Here, if you just put the student stories of Indian students up in your presentation, or have a short video by them, if you cannot get them along with you, they really can find that connect. So if a particular alumni from India is doing well, write about them or get them to speak or whatever they're doing. I mean, even if it's experiences while they're still at college, that also works. So not having a physical presence, but even just a slide about what they've done and or a short video is good.
I've already talked about SAT, ACT, but like a lot of universities are moving away from standardized testing, so it's good to inform during your session, let the students know about that. The AP or no AP, that's always a debate in our school. A lot of our kids go to outside counselors, and a lot of them tell them that you need to do APs to get into college. It's a requirement, and we tell them that since we do not follow the AP curriculum, it's not a requirement. We follow the ISC or the IB, and so it's really important for them to hear it from you that it's not a requirement. We tell them that, for example, in our IB course, we do not offer computer science, but a lot of kids who want to study computer science, so at that point we do tell them, like, it'll be good to take an AP in computer science to show your competency in that subject. Otherwise, it's not required. We've had kids who've taken 7, 10 APs. So, and when they hear it from you, it's great, because I think it kind of validates, what we are saying.
Particularly in a country which is obsessed with tests. Yeah, and marks and achievement and all of that. So it's good to know. And so the question that often comes back is, okay, will it add an edge? That's okay. It's not a requirement, but does it add an edge? So I think it's not. So when you talk about, test scores, it's important to know that how much value, what percentage of the review process really takes into account just test scores. So, like I know on one of the college search resources, it says which university, what percentage, is it the most important factor, is it a mix, so it's good to know that, because if there are universities that are very, very clear that it's this score and nothing below this, then, it just sends the message clear. I think the purpose is really for this interaction to bring about clarity.
Yeah, also, your sessions talk about any new course that's been introduced or any innovative course that's quite popular in your college. For example, we had a visit where this professor talked about genetic counselling and how it's required. You require biology and psychology, and it was perfect timing, because just a few days before I was talking to this student who wanted to study in that country and was looking for something with biology and psychology, and she wasn't sure. And so when I heard about it, and she was there at the session, we talked about it later, and we researched, and she loved it. And it was like, now she wants to apply there to that university, because it's offered as an elective in the major that she's interested in. So these kind of this information, the kind of information that you do share with our university students, sometimes it just makes a difference, and it just helps the students decide what they want to do.
In a separate interaction with only you, so this is after. Okay. What information would be helpful for you to be more effective? For you means the counselor, okay, referring to the counselor. So provide a deeper understanding of the reasons of rejections and acceptances. So if you could give us some feedback, because I'm assuming you would be reviewing the applications as well for the region. It's good for us to know, like the kind of feedback that we've sometimes got is that, the student wasn't a liberal arts student kind of a fit, seemed more focused on a particular subject. So that gives us cues as well to have those. I'm not going to tell another student, hey, next time when you're writing an essay, make sure it should sound like this. But it gives me another point to keep in mind when I'm having a conversation with a student, to say, have you looked at the curriculum? Have you seen what liberal arts is like? Or do you think you would only want to do, business, and you don't want to do the whole liberal arts, you don't want to do business in, let's say, a liberal arts kind of a background, or do a liberal arts and then move to business. So these kind of conversations can help us have more meaningful conversations even with the students, which are more nuanced and which gives us ideas also to talk to students. Difficulties the universities face with Indian students. So if you feel like what the example that I gave, that if you feel that students from a particular curriculum, or if they don't have X subjects, they tend to struggle. So tell us that, so that we can even have a conversation, okay, can they do something before they get to uni? So then that information can be passed on from us. So it's always this so if you notice, we've sort of moved beyond just the university visit, and we're going on to what can be done after to keep the conversation and still bring value to the student.
In this international space program, and so when the university rep had come, and she was very curious to find out what it was. She said, because everybody had it. It's something that everyone does in your school. And we said, no, it just so happened that the 4 of them or the 5 of them who applied had all taken part in this international space program. It just so happened to be the same university. So that was a good thing, because at least she clarified, and we have it in the back of mind to now, So, and also letters of recommendations. I mean, they're here, like I said, they go to outside counselors, and they're told that you need, for this one particular country, you need 3 letters of recommendations. And we are always, and it's not true, so we have to, it's good if you also mention this in your session, because it's, like I said, just validates that we even it's not required, and if you do send it, we will not look at it. We will not read it, so.
And we hate the question when the kids ask that, what is a good thesis? Should we do it? Should we not do it? Well, if you have a good essay, it's called send it. What does that mean? Because you have to understand that our kids and the parents are upset.
I'm just going to quickly run through the next few slides.
Getting into a particular university. So let's say, okay, if you have the score, then give it. If you have it below this, don't give it. You might as well have that out of the window. And then it's, of course, up to the kid to say whether we want to do it again, we don't want to do it again. But leaving the ambiguity around testing is the worst thing we can do to our kids.
Next. Okay. So this is the results from the student survey. Like you see the points in blue, those are the most, got the most votes. Did they get any information beyond the university website? So yes, they did. A lot of them didn't learn anything. So I'm just going to, you can just go through the points. Scholarships is a big thing. I'm surprised it wasn't talked about a lot in the survey. Yeah, so can we just move on? Amrita, yeah. Yeah, so will you consider applying to this university? Has there been any change in thought, and why? Will apply flexibility in courses. In this particular case, I remember the university had specified that there are 2 pathways, and one is if you know what you want to study, you apply to to that particular course. If you don't know what you study, we have a pathway where you apply to the college, and then you take 1 year to decide, and then you choose your major in the 2nd year. So the students really liked that. So they said, okay, great. They didn't know about it, and they wanted to apply. Will not apply. They realized admission requirements were too high for them, or the interdepartmental transfers are not allowed. So a lot of them want to apply to a lesser popular course, and they try and move to another department. We get that question a lot also. So it's great if you cover that in your session. Suggestions for improvement, which can be shared with the university rep. Yeah, focus more on specific requirements. Like we've spoken earlier, we do offer 2 curriculums in the 11th and 12th. So a lot of, we have 2 campuses. So the other campus only focuses on the national curriculum. So when university reps go to that campus and they come to us, they think we offer only the IB, so they only focus on the IB. So it's good to focus on both. Information on non-academic aspects. A lot of them want to know what to do when they're not in class. Information on pre-admission tests, if any, and more time given to question and answer sessions. What worked, the brochures, and current students that gave insight, like I had spoken about earlier.
Okay, so I think what is sort of missing in this slide is, and which we realized when we were going through the responses, is the responses of kids who were in grade 9 and 10 were different from the responses of grade 11 and 12 students. So whereas when you initially saw what we don't from the counselors, what we don't want to hear is too much history background and all of that. So that's something that younger kids, the non-academic aspects is something that the younger kids are looking at, because they're trying to sort of still get to know what the university is like. Whereas the 11th and 12th is like, okay, I have these grades, I've come this far, I don't know what so I should be looking at it from a more application and, whether I'll really be applying or not point of view. So that's important. And even the pre-admission tests are more for the older kids who are going to use, for them, it's a reality much sooner than the younger one, and more time for Q&A. A lot of times, universities may not leave time for question and answers.
Also, when the slide in which they said no new information learned, if you're going back to the school again and again, obviously the information should change or the level of information should increase. So when I was at the Doon School, the first few years, we got students from 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, everyone to sit in, interested, but they already knew about the university. So you need to, those schools that you visit often, you must up your game with information because they know the regular stuff. They would then want to know about a particular specific, say the innovation center like you mentioned, or something new happening at the university, or some interesting story about a student. I think those anecdotes work the best where you've been going more than once. For the first visits, yes, information is always welcome, but second and third, I think.
And in fact, we had a university that, instead of doing a presentation, actually gave out brochures and went through each part of the brochure and sort of elaborated on that. So I felt so good that the paper was being used and not just being chucked after the, thing. And I thought it was also, we're all dead with PowerPoints now. So I think it was nice, it was interactive. So more engaging ways of interaction is what even kids love, and that becomes their connect with the person who's there and they get excited about applying. So it's not, it just doesn't end there. So, yeah.
Yeah. So just summarizing it up, one, I think schools, you must involve parents because finally being the Indian, country, India as a country, parents are the main decision makers. So as often as possible, please invite parents. Again, a presentation has to be more interactive, and application requirements, you should have more course information, new courses, unique programs, data driven, and also do mention a little bit about food because it really works. I mean, is there vegetarian options, especially for us because we are in Hong Kong? I get this question very often, how many veg restaurants on campus? So I think a little bit about food, and if mums are there, they want to know if their boys are well fed or not. They're not interested. They don't want to know. The kids don't want to know. Must not haves, too much text on the slide. I hate this slide. There's too much text. I should have broken into two. And anything that is already found, don't just keep speaking about clubs and societies. Everyone talks about the Indian society, the Holi played on campus, the Diwali. We all know that it's celebrated. You can have some pictures, but please do not. It's as we, they're like, as a school counselor, when we had 100 and 150, we heard the same thing over and over again. It became very, very distressing at times. If there's a question, answer that, but don't dwell on it. Okay, sorry.
Just a couple of things. When you are, it happened to me once when I was talking to a school at a high school where I said, oh, our deadline is this, our documentation deadline is this. Then the counselor said, but our school's deadline is this. So every school, because you have an early decision deadline in the US, they have their own set of deadlines. So when you arrive at a school, it's good to check with the school if they have any of their deadlines. This is when they need all the UK applicants to do all their documentation, or all US students to do their documentation. And then you may say, well, your school's deadline is this, so maybe you need to finish all documentation by this deadline. So it is very, very helpful to check with schools, because I do know that a lot of schools have their own internal deadlines that they want you to communicate and advocate for. So this happened to me once. I'm talking from my experience that you need to mention that. And the other thing is, when you're planning your trips, it may be during or whenever you're planning, it is always good to leave some time to have those interactions with the counselors, either before you start or after you start, because I think it helps you to build those connections. It helps you to have those one-on-one conversations, which is very, very important At times, we are very excited about doing 3 school visits in a day. Given the traffic in India, you will hardly have time to do the presentation and run out. But you haven't built that network. So it is very important to leave some time before or after your presentation to spend a few minutes with the counselors and give them a perspective, which is very, very important. As you saw, the counselors' requirements were very different from student requirements. So you may want to just pitch in and advocate or fill in for what the counselors might be interested in and will help them to advise students better.
You guys, is that location's not important, or they just can find that on the website? I mean, I usually show pictures of the town I'm in and how far we are from the big city and the airport.
No, location in context is important. Yeah, so if you're wherever you are, you need to say how the university is linked to the city and what you do. So as Amrita mentioned, if you know it's a production hub or a music hub, you must mention those. Or if you're a art institute with a museum attached, you must mention those. But location with context, not somewhere.
So typically, universities tend to tell us how well they're connected. Like, it's this hour flight from here and there, and then, that, like, okay, I know it's important, but still I'm going to be living in that city. I'm not going to be flying in and out all the time. So what's important to me is the character of the city and how that will help bring, and I being in India can't understand or don't know what it is, what that city has to offer.
Yeah. And everything looks the same.
Yeah.
And of course, the kids use the site Rome to Rio to check any flight connections and trains, so they know that. I think build the contact list. That's very important. I'm sure you all do it. We're just saying that this is the right thing to do. And application follow-ups if it's required. So if you go to a school and the counselor says, oh, these students have applied and nothing has happened. It happens to me all the time because we had a major issue last year, and I could come back and follow up each and every student that the counselors mentioned, and I couldn't have done that if I did not spend time with the counselors. So I think that was very important. And if there are any interviews, telling them what it is about, giving them feedback as to how their students are doing. So like HKU, for that matter, we hold an interview where we give a piece of an article for students to analyze and write an essay and then go into a group discussion. And I know that the CBSE, ISC students may find it difficult. So if I inform the school well in advance that this is what's going to happen and, prepare your students accordingly for this, it's always easier. You're just kind of building that contact again. Anything you want to add? No? So general suggestion. So it happened to me in Mumbai, the city-wise counselor group. So there are a lot of counselor groups in different cities. And I just emailed one counselor, and she put up my visit dates onto the counselor group. And believe me, within an hour, I had 8 confirmations of visits in Mumbai. It was in Mumbai. And so we have these counselor groups even in India. There's a CCN counselor group, and so if you can have one friend or one counselor who you know very well, put your visit up there with dates. They can immediately, that WhatsApp group is very, very active. Use that. I think the best time to visit now, okay, India, so West closes at a certain time, the East closes on a certain time. I know fixing that those visits are not possible. And yesterday, I think there was a school that gave us a calendar which had all the dates blocked off. And from I think December 2019 to December 2020, they had the school dates on, they had the holidays on, they told us when the summer is on and off and the best time to visit. I felt it was an amazing piece of information. If you can put that up on the website, very good. If you can't, then fine. Also, if you get to understand the Indian exam systems and the school systems and when the major holidays are. So for East, it's, Durga Puja. For West, it's Diwali or Ganesh Chaturthi. If you know the festivals and the schools close around that time, you can kind of plan your travel pretty.
Just on that, I think like Namrata mentioned that counselors in India have a group. Just from my experience, counselors in Bangladesh also have a very strong group. So they kind of put you on the WhatsApp, and so for those of you who are thinking of exploring the market or you already go there, it might be a good idea to have that one contact, and he will kind of connect you to the different counselors in Dhaka. The other thing about
Can you get the mic, please? We can hear you back here. Thank you.
all right, so what I mentioned was like India, the counselors in Dhaka and Bangladesh also have a WhatsApp group. For those of you trying to explore that market or you go back there, it might be a good idea to contact with one, and they will connect you to all the other counselors and advise you when is the right time to visit. In India broadly, yes, we have multiple festivals, and may be very difficult for you to know when to come in, but technically July, August, early September is a good time. For most schools in India, they reopen around that time, and it's a good idea to write into them in advance because they keep getting a lot of visit requests. So the earlier that you write into them, they are able to block the calendar. Yeah, I think, yeah.
I think we'll just close now. It's all repetition. Any questions that you may have? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mahima. I'm from University of York, UK. So my question is to you. You did mention that it's nice if we arrange a guest, like a test lectures for students, so that they can get a taste of what it will be in the university. It is great if the academic is flying in. We can definitely arrange that. But do you think if we organize an online class for them, that will work?
We could try it. I mean, the only and I think what we can do is once you have the session in school, we have the sorry. So the question was if we are recommending that you should do a session, an academic session, so that they get a flavor of what it is to study that subject at the university. If a lot of times you don't have academic people with you, so how do you manage that? So a suggestion has come through to do that online. I mean, we haven't tried it, but I'm sure.
I think our kids are very used to online classes because
So-
we do use Zoom a lot because of we've had issues with Delhi sometimes, our
The school being
respective
closed,
school
so
holidays
yeah, so
and-
they're used to all the.
Yeah, so I think you can try it. I mean, not try it. I think you should go.
So related to online class, how is virtual visits received in India through Zoom or Skype?
Okay, so our school is kids don't carry their devices, so it's not like maybe it may work with some of the IB schools where kids are. It's a regular practice to sort of carry their laptops and see it. I wouldn't know an answer because I haven't heard of it being used or practiced here, and it's definitely something that I'm skeptical of in my school.
So if I reach out to a counselor and ask for help to coordinate a time to gather the students, and maybe the counselor could use one laptop to connect the
Let's try it.
university rep.
Yeah, I'm happy to try it. Yeah. Yeah.
I think also about internet. Internet can be patchy in India, can be patchy in certain places. So for a virtual visit or a webinar, it's very essential that there is uninterrupted and a high-speed network available. So maybe in certain cities, the major cities, you can do it. But if you want to target the smaller ones, maybe that could be definitely a problem. Any other questions?
Wanted to add something to the colleges, like with all the information that we require, we also require that if you could tell us this curricula will have this credits in your university, because most of the time students do ask that if we do an IB curriculum or an AS level, what are the credits that we are going to get in your university. So some universities do highlight that okay, these are the credits that you get, and you get a 6-month course off and all that. So I thought whether all universities could add that.
Great point, great point. Any other questions? No?
You want to share your experiences?
Yeah,
that
any
you all
experiences,
can
yeah.
benefit from? Any one of you want to share your experience about something like this?
So every time when, as a university rep, emailing the high school counselors, we have great ideas, and I always ask in my emails if I could, present. And it's most often that the high schools can't accommodate that. And it's hard for them to pull them out of class. They're mostly, if I can do anything, it's after school, after 5 o'clock. And for some universities, we have interviews and we have other places to go too. So I guess it's mostly for high schools. If trying to set up a time where students can actually sit down and watch a presentation, I think that's the hardest part for me.
I think it's with IC3 movement that things like that won't happen anymore, because I was in, part of the IC3 Institute, and I was interviewing some of these 23 counselors, and most of them after the institute went back and made these changes, because that's what the institute is doing. And I did get to know from at least 10 of them, which said that we have now dedicated time in the week that we set aside for things like this. And usually it's a Friday or a Saturday, or, if they're working on the Saturday. So I know you can't just be traveling on the Saturdays, but also if you could tell them they could use a lunch break, or say a assembly period, or say a craft period, 0 period. So that's early in the morning or late at night, late in the afternoon. So those are suggestions. And once the counselor becomes known to you, or just go and talk to the counselor. That's the first, if you go and talk to the counselor, spend 15-20 minutes out of your day just speaking to the counselor, I think it might help.
So I think that's really worked, I'm glad you brought this out, because a lot of times the students aren't available, and so the counseling team or the counselors have started meeting the universities, and then I'm like, okay, she's talking about this course, and I have these 3 kids who might be interested. So that just often becomes the starting point, and then, because it's in the interest of your students, you do try to make time for that.
Hi, I just want to say thanks for a really interesting presentation. So I'm from a university in Ireland, and I'm just interested to see that while there are some common information requirements from students and parents and counsellors, there are significant differences. So for us coming into a high school or visiting counsellors, is it better to focus on one of those groups or to prepare separate information for the different categories?
So I think if it's a school that will be using a pre-visit survey, that'll help you customize to the best. But I would say that meeting the student need and the parent need when you're there for that 30-40 minutes is priority. And the counselor can always get their answers before or after. Or an email. Or over an email. So. I'm going to stand right here and take it back.
Sure. Thank you for a very informative session. I'm Devesh, and I'm with the University of Bristol. I have 2 questions. One is that with regards to students, how important is accreditations for them with regards to any programs? And second question is that would you prefer that universities visit you in a small group so that students have choices, or is it solo visit is equally good as well?
I'm going to answer the second question. Yeah. Please visit us in groups. It's not about choices. It's about the time on the calendar.
Managing the calendar, school calendar is really, really hard.
You want to talk about the accreditation?
The accreditation?
What? About the accreditation. What? Can you give an example of accreditation?
As business, yeah. Yes, it matters. It matters not so much to the student because he's not really made his career plan, but to the parents, yes, it is. It does.
Just want to ask, just an extension to Devesh's questions. I'm Sonal from University of Surrey. In case we are, say, a group of 5 universities traveling, how long would you want that presentation to be, considering all 5 would like to speak, talking about the university, and then, of course, doing something extra as a topic, which could be helpful to all the students, because I'm sure the attention span is like 20 minutes, I'm assuming, for a student. would the students like to hear something for 45 minutes and an hour? Okay. Right.
We went to this particular school, so there were all Canadian universities there. So what we did, we were all Canadian universities there. There were 7 of us. It was very difficult for all of us to do a 10-minute pitch. It would take the whole day. So the school had set up like you would do a study in Canada, why Canada? So in your case, it can be why United Kingdom. And then you can have your small booth or just a small table and anybody interested will come and talk to you. That's more personalized conversation. I think that is more effective than 10 minutes because by the time if I'm the last university, nobody wants to listen to me. Yeah, so they've already had 40 minutes of universities telling them who they are. So that might be a good idea when you're pitching to schools to suggest that, would you mind us working like that? So I think then you collaborate together and you talk about the country and that gets the interest.
But I also like the way KIC does its visits. So you have a 2-minute spiel. You have to come and introduce you because there would be students who don't know your university at all. So you need to first give at least 2 slides or 1 slide of what your university is about so that they're prepared to come in and speak to you. So I think that and then getting into groups is...
When you have a larger group visiting, I think it's always better to break out and have individualized sessions before, and prior to that have a common session and then break it out because large groups and it's difficult to hear, I mean for students to sit down and hear.
That one school that we went to, it took us an hour, 15 minutes to just go through all the 60 universities talking for a minute at this school. And it took an hour, 15 minutes. All of us were sitting. We couldn't break out. We were just sitting.
So I'm Wendy with Education in Ireland. I think what could solve that is rather than have 60 people speak, all of y'all have audiovisual. So have a slide, okay, a looping slide which just shows about the university. One slide. Don't let them speak, okay. Maybe an education body can just say, no, I'm saying it cuts out a lot of time. The students can interact with you all at your desk rather than having 60 minutes go with 60 universities. Yeah, but even like recently we did an international school roadshow to 3 cities, okay. I just addressed the students saying, you know, this is why Ireland and these are the universities here. And we had 1 hour in the school, but the students could go and meet each of them for a longer duration. So I think that works better. You can just have a kind of a loop presentation.
That works for us when we have our fairs.
Hello, my name is Alicia. I'm from Ryerson University in Toronto, Canada. My question to you is, speaking with regards to the counsellor groups, is it possible for counsellors in different regions to organize school fairs in collaboration? So I know, they're in Cairo, in Bangladesh, in Southeast Asia. They work with the other schools in the region so that we are able to attend their schools or be able to sign up for them. I think that helps us map out our travels. I think it works effectively and then also works with our schedule so we can know if we could attend. I often find that I'm getting invitation to schools where they overlap events, so I have to turn down something.
I'll first give you my experience as a Doon School counselor. We tried to do that. So whenever we had the CIS or big university fairs coming in, we would alternate the venue. So 1 year Dehradun, the other year Moulsari. And then we started having a fair where we invited every school to come in with numbers of 50. And the universities could just spend the whole day. However, it was because the counselors had a good relation between them. The schools had a good relation between them. We are still very far away from a very collaborative country. And everything based on marks and who's doing better and whose placements are better. So I think it's an ideal situation, the one that you mentioned, but we could do it in pockets in smaller towns, yes, but maybe not so much in bigger towns, that you could call everyone in and have that fair. I mean, I know it is much better, but no.
So I understand that you guys, that the schools are sort of competing with themselves. A way you might handle that is Saigon South, for instance, has all the major international schools in Ho Chi Minh City, and they just have a little blurb in the contact, and they work with all. So they're still, well, they are actually organizing a fair altogether, but so when you come, you know who all the contacts are. They also say what part of the city, especially in some of these larger cities, trying to figure out, okay, well, which of these 3 schools can I do close to each other? So they even have it mapped out, and it's like the most helpful thing in the world. So then you still can compete.
Thank you. Thank you for attending. Thank you.